Hello students, let's read the problem. And it says, in terms of x, solve the formula y equals 4x parentheses 2 plus y 4y. Okay, so we need to solve for y. Okay, that's the most important thing for us to recognize first, right? What is it that I'm solving for? Because that's going to determine who is the one that I need to leave by itself, right? Okay, and if you notice on the answer choices, they all have the y by itself, so that kind of confirms what we have, right? So let's go ahead and rewrite the problem. So I have y equals, and I just like to rewrite it so that it gives me more space to actually do my steps, right? And please don't tell me, Miss, that's the answer because it has y by itself. Yes, but it has another y in the parentheses. You see that? So we cannot just say, oh, that's my answer because on the left, y is by itself. Okay? So what we need to do then is we need to use distributive property. Okay? So to do that, you multiply 4x times everything that is inside the parentheses, okay? So 4x is going to multiply each term inside the parentheses. So on the left, I still have the y. On the right, 4x times 2 gives me 8x, right? And 4x times a y, well, that's going to give me just 4xy. I cannot say x to the second power because the x and the y are two different variables, right? Two different, so I cannot combine them. So now at this point, I know I need to move the y to the left, right? So write this term, this one right here, I need to move it to the left because it has a y, okay? And I know what you're thinking, but it has a 4 and an x. That's okay. As long as I move everything that contains the y, we will see what the next step will be, okay? So I am going to subtract 4xy on both sides. I like writing a little line just to show me that that's like the step that I did. On the right, my 4xy cancels out. Is that right? On the left, I'm going to have y minus 4xy equals 8x. Okay? So, are we good so far? All right. So now I notice that on the left, I have y's on both of the terms. Is that right? So think about, for example, the first y. There's no coefficient. So it's understood that it has a what? A 1, right? Anytime that your variable or my term, in this case the y by itself, has no coefficient, it's understood that it's 1y. So we can write down the 1. Okay? So now I want to find the common term. What is it that they both, what's the common factor, right? My factor, remember, has to do with looking at both terms. What is it that they both share, okay? So it's like if I write them down on the tree diagram, I'm going to separate my number and my variable. So that's my tree diagram for 1y. That tree diagram for 4xy, I'm going to separate the number and the variables, but then I can also separate my variables. Remember that one? There's another lesson that we cover this. So now I can see that both of my terms have what? They both have the y, right? That's finding the common factor. Very good. So that y, I'm going to bring it outside the parentheses. Inside the parentheses, well, there is a 1 minus, well, all of this needs to be written down in there, right? But 2 times 2, remember, it's a 4. So that will actually be a 4. And then x equals to 8x. Okay? And now I need to leave y by itself. So remember, when you are multiplying, right, a number, or when you're multiplying a variable in a number, you can always leave the variable alone or by itself by dividing. So for example, I'm going to write down an example here. Okay, so for example, let's suppose I have 5x and I want to solve for x. Wouldn't I need to divide by 5 because they're multiplying? So that's exactly what we gotta do here. Since the y is multiplied by everything inside the parentheses, I am gonna need to divide by that, by everything that is inside the parentheses, right? There's two terms, so I do need to divide on the right by both of my terms. Okay? So the 1 minus 4x cancels out, and now I can say that the y is by itself. And this is my answer, right? So let's look at the answer choices and tell me, where do you see all of this? Not letter A, right? Letter A says 1 plus. Not letter B, because it looks like they swapped the terms, right? So that's not right. So C is completely like off. It doesn't even have the 8x. So you are right if you're thinking about D as the correct answer. Okay? That's the answer, guys.